Hi, we're going to talk today about draft number 1 for paper number 2. We're going to talk about how to pick an idea from Bain and explain it, apply it, and evaluate it. Good strategy right now would be to have your sample essay and rubric out. And as the example paragraphs or sections for this paper appear during the slideshow, I'd encourage you to stop the video and read, because I won't be reading word for word what appears on the screen. So step 1 in the process of doing our first draft is we're going to pick an idea from Bain. Well, what do we pick? Well, we're going to look at our notes and look for a claim, a term, an example, or a quote. Hey, that sounds like CTEC. It is. We're going to use CTEC to pick an idea from Chapter 2 of Bain. We're going to focus only on Chapter 2 for this first draft. So what are we going to do once we've picked that concept? We are going to explain it. We're going to explain the concept using paraphrases, our own words, or brief quotes from Bain. We're going to integrate those paragraphs and quotes into our own language. We're going to create a framework of our own to present Bain's ideas and explain them to an audience that has not read the book. And that's the key point. The standard for evaluating the quality of an explanation in this paper is, would an audience that has not read it understand it? And of course, we're always going to include a correct citation. So let's move on to the example. I suggest you read through this paragraph a little bit by pausing the video. It's a sample that is from the sample essay, so you might recognize it. But I think it's important in the context that we're talking about to see the explanation as a separate part of the paragraph. And as you can see, pretty much the whole paragraph, the whole first paragraph from the sample essay is an explanation. And if you look at it, you'll see a few interesting things here. Hopefully you stopped the video and read it at this point. But I want to point out that I love the quotes that the author has chosen to integrate in here, but I think 2 out of 3 of them are too long. We want to work with shorter quotes, anywhere from 2 to 6 words, rather than long sentences from our source whenever we can. So this is still a good paragraph. I'd say it's a solid B in terms of its use of its sources. It has correct citations and the quotes are excellent. But an A-level use of sources would do a little bit more integrating, a little bit more chunking or selecting of brief sections of the quote rather than the whole text like that. All right, so let's move on now and talk about how we're going to apply the idea from Bain. So we've explained the idea for an audience that hasn't read the book. Now we want to apply the idea by testing it against our own experience, an experience that you've had. And I'll lay out in a minute the kind of experiences we're talking about. But basically what we want to do with whatever experience we choose to write about is ask the question, does the experience validate Bain's idea, or does our experience challenge Bain's idea? And in this case, it could also be a mix of the two. In fact, I think some of the most interesting writing is when your experience validates to some degree, challenges to some degree. Now, the key thing here when we talk about an experience and what kind of experience we mean is specificity. The more specific you can make an experience, the better. So if you can pick a specific incident, or pick a specific article or book you've read, or pick a specific observation you've had of a group of people or an individual, you'll have a better story to tell, you'll have a better story to test against the experience, and you'll have better criteria for validating or challenging Bain. So specificity of experience is the key, but the kind of experience could range from something that's happened to you at school, to something you've read, to something you've seen out in the world more broadly. But specificity remains the key. Let's take a look at an example of the application. I actually think this example is quite compelling. It's obviously the writer has a speech impediment and encounters stereotyping against him because of that impediment. So take a minute and read this paragraph. So hopefully you paused and you're coming back now. I just want to point out what I really like is the way this paragraph not only tells us what happened, but really carefully walks through how this experience with the golf team affected the participant, the writer, but also what it revealed about how stereotypes work and how crazy these stereotypes were. So it's a really interesting application of Bain that not only helps us understand it better, but also moves it forward and helps the writer figure out whether it's relevant or valid for him. And then that sets up the last move we want to make in our draft and throughout this paper writing process. We want to evaluate Bain's ideas. And what we mean by that is a simple question. Is Bain's idea useful, problematic, or both? The tricky part here is we want to think about this on a personal level, but we also want to think about it on a social level. So we want to know, we want to answer that first question in terms of our own personal experience, but we also want to extrapolate it, extend it, and say, based on what we've experienced, what do we think? Is it going to work for a bigger group as well? And that's why I think this last example, the example of evaluation, is the most important one. First of all, you're going to notice that the white text, in some ways you could argue, should continue to be part of the application. And I would be fine with that. I really don't care what you label application or evaluation as long as you do both things. But I included it here because I thought it really set up the part where he moves in the orange to talking about why he thinks this Bain idea is personally useful. Now, if you go look at the original paragraph in the paper, you'll see that the original paragraph only includes the white and the orange. That I've added the lines in blue because I felt the original paragraph didn't really get at the social component. It didn't move beyond the individual to the social, and I tried to add that to this paragraph. So the last few blue sentences are my language that attempts to take the idea in the original paragraph and extend it to the social level. So yes, Bain's ideas about stereotypes are relevant to my life. Look, I'm explaining that. But I also think they're an important and valid idea for other people's lives. And that's what I explained to you in the blue. So again, the evaluation is answering that question, are Bain's ideas useful or problematic? And how could they maybe be useful or problematic for you personally, but also for other students or another different group of people who might benefit? Okay, so we've laid out for you how to explain, apply, and evaluate, and we've given you examples of those three things, including an example of evaluate that is different than the sample essay. Now it's your turn to try this. You go ahead and pick a claim, term, example, or quote from chapter 2, and you go ahead and draft an explanation, application, and evaluation of that idea that you choose. You can write 1 paragraph, 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs. You want to think of this as a section, not as a paragraph, because often it takes more than 1 paragraph to do all 3 of these things. I've had students take 3 paragraphs, 1 for explain, 1 for apply, 1 for evaluate. And as you saw in the sample essay, you can do 2 paragraphs where you you mix explaining with application and then a little more application with evaluation. That's another way to do it. And then finally, you could try to jam the whole thing in 1 paragraph, which is the case in the sample essay for the final idea that's introduced. Your goal is going to be 300 to 600 words. Obviously, the closer you are to 600 words, the closer you are to significant progress on this paper. So you want to push yourself to really fully develop these ideas so you have a good starting draft to build on. I don't want you to worry about topic sentences yet, though. We're going to work on those later. After you've drafted a couple sections, we're going to go back and create topic sentences for them. So right now, you're really focused on sort of the core of the section, explaining, applying, evaluating. Later, we're going to add on the topic sentence that introduces the section. So you go out there and you have some fun with this, and let me know if you need any help at all. All right, and when you're all ready to go, you post your draft to Blackboard. I'll see you in Blackboard, and also happy to hear you on the phone, text messages, or email. Thanks for listening. Bye.